Now, our next panel discussion covers the lifeblood of creativity, funding. Leading the discussion is arts activist, PhD researcher, mentor, consultant, and Guardian writer, Suzanne Jones. Please welcome Susan and our panel to the stage.
Hi, everybody. Hi, so I don't have to introduce myself because it's just been done for me, but I'd like to just mention, you know, I'm one of those very rare classes now, which is I come from a working class background. And I hadn't had to say that until a couple of years ago when it occurred to me how regimented and fixed the world of arts and culture has become in terms of who's part of it and who isn't part of it. So I was delighted really to be asked to chair this particular session with Zealous, an invitation that came out of the blue through social media. A good example of how social media can make connections that other things can't. I'm particularly interested because the notion of creativity is something that I'm researching at the moment. And I wanted to look in particular in my research at the relationship between creativity, artist creative practice, and arts policy. So this is an ideal opportunity to start exploring those issues in terms of how investment in artists works. The term creativity is one of the most widely used and misused words in the English language, a bit like culture, really. And whilst in the last century, creativity was defined as capturing the height of human capacity with a stress on originality and innovation, we've now got this difficulty of it being very much more broadly applied and approached. And everything can be creative, from baking, the homemade, refurbishing your front room, learning a bit of craft, and all sorts of pop-up ventures as well. There are all sorts of varying views on how creativity occurs. The notion that it's a kind of a linear activity in which there's stages of preparation, incubation, ideation, selection, and execution. It tends to reinforce the view that creativity emerges from sudden moments of insight, and the process, and it's a territory for lone individuals. But as this morning's speakers so usefully talked about, the notion of it being a collaborative activity is a kind of, in a sense, the other side of the coin. So those heightened levels of creativity that lead to innovation, that emerge from sparks of ideas, that develop through conversations, through interaction between people working together, and that isn't always in the same physical space, because the virtual world has quite a lot of parts to play on that. So just picking up on Peter Bazalgette this morning, who said it was really important that the big cities had high-speed broadband. It's very important that everybody everywhere has high-speed broadband, because there's no reason to disadvantage the 30% of people who aren't living in cities, in which I count myself. I don't live in a city. In the 60s, research showed that creativity is informed by a whole host of intellectual, emotional, motivational, and moral characteristics. The common traits that people across all creative fields seem to have in common are openness to one's inner life, preference for complexity and ambiguity, an unusually high tolerance for disorder and disarray, the ability to extract order from chaos, independence, unconventionality, and a willingness to take risks. Something that Thomas Homer Dixon also talked about is creativity comes from people with prospective minds that aggressively engage with uncertainty and risk. So put that aside, that linear approach that I described earlier. you've got to be ready to find something that completely turns on its head what you thought you were going to do when you were going to do it. That's the creativity that or the notion of creativity that we're faced with. Either way, though, I don't think it's anything to do personally with a flash in the plan. One of the things I've discovered over the last year or so, now I'm not running a company, is that all those good ideas that I thought were so good a year ago were actually quite poor ideas in comparison with the ones that I'm developing now, where I have more headspace. And I think it's quite interesting to draw here on brain sciences, which is also showing us that actually if we don't concentrate for an hour at a time and allow our brains to, if you like, to rest and imagine, then we don't actually do our thinking justice. So there's a kind of an issue at play here in that we're all being encouraged to portfolio work and multitask and be brilliant time managers. But I'm not sure that that will make us good creative people at the same time. A Nesta report showed, however, and I think it's important to note this, is that creative jobs have less risk attached to them, simply because you can't automate quite what it is that individuals do in that creative process. So I think we should take heart in the fact that people do need the creativity that comes from individual people. The important thing to do is to make sure that it continues to be on the agenda, along with the need to support and nurture large-scale infrastructural development. And on that front, you know, I just want to introduce very quickly the notion of access to money. Personally, I'm very impressed with charitable trusts such as Hamlin and the Jerwood Foundation, because they are looking at the notion of putting funding directly into artist practice, rather than taking the easier route of supporting arts infrastructures that artists may or may not relate to. There are newer schemes such as the Momentum Music Fund, which Sarah was involved with more recently, which offers very important small-scale grants, 5 to 15,000 for artists and bands to break through to the next level of their careers. But this kind of time and space funding for other arts individuals remains very hard to come by. Only 8% of the Arts Council of England's entire grants for the arts pot in a whole year went to visual and applied artists. And within that, a mere £268,000 went to just 26 craftspeople in a climate when the crafts are not only incredibly popular, but also have a real energy around them because of the way that they can and are using new technology. Worryingly, research into how publicly funded arts organisations describe their role, and of course a lot of Arts Council funding is going to organisations, is that it reveals that the artistic practices are really cursorily mentioned and ill understood because of the emphasis on measurement and public benefit attached to public funding. Also worth remembering that Dyson worked his way through over 5,000 prototypes before he made the vacuum cleaner that we now all love. And he said, people think of creativity as a mystical process. This model conceives of innovation as something that happens to geniuses, but this could not be more wrong. Creativity is something we can all improve at by realizing it has specific characteristics. Above all, it is about daring to learn from our mistakes. I think it's really important to recognize that it's important to allow for failure as we look for creative products and we look for success. Because it's true to say that if you don't fail, you don't learn. And if you don't learn, you don't get any better. In such a context, This is where we are in terms of funders and investors and advocates who need to take the longer view and be prepared to incubate in the broadest sense and foster those seeds of success, and to, in a sense, help bring forth the new role models which individuals and those working collectively in arts and innovation can learn from. So now, with no further ado, I'm going to introduce Martin Smith. He's going to talk about his work with Ingenious, which supports the arts directly through philanthropic, excuse me, I got up very early this morning, through philanthropic money, time and expertise to the arts and education bodies, but also, very importantly, indirectly, through contributing their leadership thinking, commercial skills.
Thank you very much, Susan. I'm going to stand up because I want to use a couple of slides. First of all, thank you very much, Guy, for the introduction to speak here. I'm hugely impressed by what Zealous is achieving, and it's a great privilege to be asked to take part. The exam question is, how do we fund creative growth in the future? And I want to start by going back to where the last session ended, which was with a reference to the dreaded access to finance question. And I want to say that, first of all, the creative economy is a concept that was invented about 15 years ago, and creative industries was a concept that was invented about 20 years ago. And we've all got used to talking about the access to finance problem. And I want to tell you that if you pose the question in that way, is there an access to finance problem in the creative industries? I will tell you, no, there isn't. If you ask the question in a different way, is there a shortage of finance at certain points in the value chain of certain parts of the creative sector? I will tell you, yes, now you're on to something. And actually, the point that we have got to, it seems to me now, in terms of public policy, is that because the creative industries have come of age, we need to be much more sophisticated and much more precise in our thinking about these questions of how you fund creative growth. There's no reason why you should know who I am or who we are. So I'll have this slide up for no more than 20 seconds. As a business, we've raised about $5 billion to invest in creative assets. We have about 5,000 investors. We're associated with some quite interesting films, including Carol and Brooklyn and Suffragette, as co-producers and financiers. We've done lots of telly, lots of music, and lots of venture capital, and I suspect it's probably the venture capital we'll talk most about this morning. We invest our investors' money, the money that we go out to raise to invest in creative assets. We have 30 people who do nothing else but raise money. And then we put our own money alongside. So the risk that we take is always aligned with those of our investors. And picking up the point that we need to be much more precise when we talk about what are funding requirements, these are the three things we have learned over the years. And I can only, in this 5 or 6 minutes, flag them up as headlines. But all of these things are crucially important. The second bullet in particular, investing in content businesses is simply not the same as investing in services business. If you want to start an advertising business, all you need is a laptop and a client, and you're away. You want to make a game, you want to record a song, make a film, TV program, you need money to sink into the prototype. You need to spend money before you have any chance of finding out whether there's an audience for what you want to do. It's a completely different business. And the third bullet here will probably come as a surprise to lots of you. We have actually in the past returned money to investors because we have not been able to find propositions put to us which were sufficiently compelling from a commercial point of view for us to be able to back them. We look at hundreds of propositions. And one of the things I want to say, and I think one of the next speakers will come on to this, is that what we absolutely have to do in this country, this is the exam question, what we need to do. This is how I would express it. We have huge, almost unlimited amounts of creative talent in this country. What we don't have, and what is absolutely vital for improving our rate of being able to fund stuff, is matching commercial skills. We also need to address the problem of scale. There are about 200,000 creative businesses in the UK, 90% of which employ 4 people or less. That actually means that most of them employ 2 people or less. They can't finance their own stuff. They don't have the balance sheets to be able to do it. We need to address the problem of what I call investor readiness, so that those companies who come knocking on our door, and I suspect David's door as well, are in a better shape to be able to receive investment. The 4th bullet here, I'll need to move on because I'll run out of time, is also crucial. We need to get more accountants and bankers to understand the creative process. The success on which Ingenious is based is down to one thing, and that is the founder of the business, Patrick McKenna, who is an accountant, didn't go to university, got into numbers, got interested in the creative process, and started working in the rock business. He was an advisor to Dave Stewart, Annie Lennox, Iron Maiden, all sorts of people. What he did was to understand the importance of matching money and creativity. And that's the basis for successful businesses as far as funding growth is concerned. I was going to talk and finish by talking about Robert Stigwood, who died last week. I don't think I'm going to do that on the day that Bowie has passed away. But I do want to talk, if there's time, about what it means to be an entrepreneur, because I think one of the things that's going wrong in the creative sector is that we're developing too pious an idea about what an entrepreneur is. But perhaps we'll come back to that later. So, in conclusion, there are a number of things that we need to do. But one of the things that we need to do is to look at questions of scale. We need to look at how art and commerce come together and how we make that work better. But we need, above all, what I would call knowledgeable capital. That is to say, money, pots of money, not just any old money, but money in the hands of people who really understand the creative process. And that we are short of. Thank you.
I'm going to ask you later about the entrepreneurship question, so hold on to that. I'd like to introduce Sarah Thirtle next. I've chosen the running order. Who's Head of Business Lending Programs at Creative United, where she's involved in the Creative Industry Finance Scheme, which sounds like it's going to be of great interest to a lot of people here.
Just wait for my... Oh, there we go. So hi, yes. So my name's Sarah. I work for a company called Creative United. A lot of what we do is very involved with and connected to a lot of the ideas that I've heard being discussed here this morning. So happy to give you our input and our perspective and what our drivers are for what we do. So just in these few minutes, I'll probably just take you through what we do as a company, which will hopefully introduce some topics which we can then talk about later on the panel and invite questions later on. So our mission is, there's those words up there that everyone's banging on about, sustainable and resilient. But we basically want to help creative business from all the creative sectors achieve their ambitions in a way that's sustainable to them, and in doing so, make all kinds of arts accessible to everyone in the country, be it visual arts or music or theatre or crafts or whatever it may be. And we have different programmes of work that we undertake to do that. The one that I'll focus on a bit more shortly is the Creative Industry Finance Programme, but I'll just whiz you through some of the others. We've got Own Art, which enables anyone, if they wanted to purchase contemporary art, and they might feel a little bit blocked out of doing that because they might get a bit scared going in a gallery because it's all highfalutin and they might not understand it, but they really like a piece of art. We enable people to purchase art in installments, which is interest-free. So something that might seem unaffordable can become affordable, more money for the artist, more money for the gallery, more people collecting their own art. Take It Away is a similar program for music instruments for children and young people. If they feel they might be priced out of buying a musical instrument, we enable them to buy it in installments, over time, interest-free. So where someone thinks they can't have a piano or a drum kit or a trumpet, hopefully we are offering a way that they can buy that for their child, or a young person can buy that new instrument when they're going to go off and form a band or go to university, start their careers. Arts Card is a very new program in a pilot stage at the moment, which is introducing creativity and culture and arts into employee benefits. So we are motivating lots of companies to introduce Arts Card for their employees. So where employees might get access to local gyms and other kind of employee benefits, training, professional development, we're also saying that arts and culture should also be included as an employee benefit because it's important to everyone in so many different ways, as we all can agree. I won't go on about the reasons. We all know them. So Creative Industry Finance is the program that I lead on. The Warwick Commission from the Warwick University very kindly said we were a key driver for creative and cultural growth. So that was very nice of them, and I tend to agree. It's an Arts Council England funded program which allows us to offer free business advice, business guidance, all around these ideas of how do you create a sustainable business model, be it for a commercial creative business or be it for a charity or not-for-profit business, or if you're a freelance visual artist or if you run a huge organization. We can come in and help you with all kinds of business skills development or general business planning strategy, with one-to-one free business advice and workshops and other things. And we also work with lenders to see how loans can be used for creative and cultural companies. How can a loan be a driver or an activator for other kinds of funding? Because, you know, Arts Council funding or trust and foundation grants can cover some things but can't cover other things. And can a loan help a certain part of your business where then maybe investment can come in and fund another part of your business? So we're looking to see how it can form part of that pie. So working with a bunch of lenders to help us do that. I'm clicking, it's not moving. Ah, there we go. So we want to empower creative companies to achieve great things, in a nutshell. So that is through creating more access to finance, the buzzword of the moment, improving business skills, and then hopefully providing evidence of the effectiveness of that. So we ran a pilot scheme, that went very well. Now the program is national. So everything that we do, we're monitoring and trying to show how providing free business advice can be really impactful, as well as providing access to finance, because the two things go together. In fact, a lot of our clients only take the business advice and realize they don't actually need the finance. They just needed a help with how they were running their particular organization or business. So, hello, this is going to take some time. There's supposed to be some other things happening. No? Anyway, we have free business advice, which I said. There was supposed to be a little caption that said, we work with, there we go, 29 business advisors across the country, so they can do one-to-one work wherever you are. Access to finance is with our lending partners. Arts Impact Fund, which was mentioned earlier, that's one of our lending partners. We also have social lenders, we have commercial lenders, we have people that just work on personal finance, people that just work with charities. So we can work with just about any kind of creative or cultural setup, we hope. Smooth. Okay, just some stats. So in the first year of the national programme, we worked with about 136 creative and cultural companies of all shapes and sizes across the country, providing them with business advice and workshops and support and guidance. There were about 722 hours of one-to-one business advice was provided across those various companies. About 13 or 14 of them in that time period decided to go ahead and move towards taking a loan. So we helped across those companies, well, just over £200,000 worth of loan finance accessed. So we're not talking huge sums of money yet, but someone mentioned earlier that even just a small amount of money at the right place at the right time can make a huge difference to how a company develops, because you've built a plan for how you're going to use that money and you're going to make a return on that money. That's the whole point. So we're making a start and it's going well, and I'm sure I'll be answering some more questions about that later.
Thank you very much, Sarah. That's really useful. I'm going to move swiftly on because time is pressing on and introduce David, who I only just met this morning. So bear with me if I haven't got it quite right. He's the CEO of Edge Investments. In November, they launched a £40 million Creative Enterprise Fund, which brings together private sector funding from leading institutions and high net worth individuals with a significant investment from the government's British Business Bank, and is aimed towards those 200,000 creative businesses that Martin talked about, who currently find it difficult to attract adequate capital to maximise their potential. Over to you, David.
Well, thank you for the promotion. I'll have a word with my boss about me being CEO of Edge, because I'm not. I'm investment director at Edge. We are a specialist venture capital company, specialist in that we invest in the creative industries, which I think, as mentioned before, is quite rare. There's not a lot of venture capital focused on the sector. History of Edge, founded by a number of people who were quite heavily in the music industry, lawyers and live event people. So we have raised now about £200 million for the sector. As you said, a new fund just been raised for £40 million. We've invested most of the first fund, which was a venture capital trust. So we, in the same way as Martin said, we raise money from third parties and invest it on their behalf. We also invest our own money alongside them, so it becomes very personal when you take a write-off and you've got to explain that to the wife. So we have recently launched this new fund, £40 million. We think the creative industries is a great place to invest, but only if you know what you're doing in that sector. You mentioned Nesta before. We've seen some work from Nesta that says creative industries businesses are actually less likely to fail than a lot of other sectors and the norm. However, a lot of projects are highly likely to fail. So what we do is we hope and believe that we track the trends and technology advances that are affecting our industry, and then find and invest in those businesses that are benefiting from those trends and technology advances. That falls into two categories. One is businesses which are traditional media businesses creating content, intellectual property. An example of that we've invested in the past is a business called Coolabyte that has just brought back the Clangers to the BBC. So it is a children's entertainment business, makes television shows, books, film, online. We finance that business. We've helped finance some of its developments, but again, it's got a great business model in that it gets funded by other people. That might be publishers giving it commissions. It might be the BBC or PBS that commission Clangers. so that we don't have to finance the whole thing. So that business has done, in the last 2 years, £18 million of production for £1 million of investment from us. The other sort of business we invest in are technology businesses, but technology businesses that have already generated their core intellectual property, their software, their offering to the market. And again, it's been mentioned, not a services business, but a business which has intellectual property, be it the clangers or be it technology. So we invest in businesses which have a certain scale and at a certain point. So we are not the very early stage, the startup, or even the seed money, but businesses which have achieved something and where our money can take them further. So we invest between £500,000 and £5 million in any one company. So our new fund, £40 million, 60% of it comes from an organisation you may not have heard of, called the British Business Bank, which is a large, I believe the right phrase would be Quango, that invests in a number of different aspects of financing for SMEs in the UK, one of which is they back venture capital funds. The other 40% of our money comes from private individuals, some of which are very high net worths, down to me investing my own money in the fund. So I don't know if we've got a video. I'm getting a thumbs up. This is a business that we've invested in from our prior fund that gives you, I hope, an example of a technology business that we've backed. We all know the issues that advertising and content are facing over financing their businesses because of the fall off in advertising or the change in advertising. One of the issues, say to people, when you watch TV and you TiVo a program or you Sky Plus it, I'm almost certain you fast forward the adverts. And as someone said, I think it was about making CSI in the States, it costs $1 million an episode. How the goodness do they expect to finance making that show if no one watches the adverts anymore? Same with online. If you look at the online ad blocking technologies that are coming through, it's killing on any sort of advertising model. So what can you do about it? What this business we've backed, which is a British business called Myriad. Myriad has what it calls native in-video advertising. It places the brand in the video at the point of broadcast. And that can be television, it can be online, and it gets around the fact that there is no way of monetizing your content by putting the brand in the content and monetizing it. Because again, all of the creativity in the world needs to be financed from somewhere, and in most media markets that has been advertising, sponsorship, etc. So Myriad is a business, a British business that does this, doing it around the world, in India, in Australia, and heavily in Europe and the States. So. So it gives you an example of the type of business that we invest in from the technology side, as well as bringing back the clangers that everyone loves. And we've got the fund only launched in November, so we've got money and interest in great creative businesses if you want to contact us.
And he's got his own plug in there. Thanks very much. As somebody who ran a traditional publishing company, I can tell you that advertising dropped like a stone from half of our earned income to about a tenth at the point that I left a couple of years ago. But fortunately, crowdfunding picked up the difference, and the development of membership schemes, which is what I did, turned from a publisher to a membership scheme, solved that problem very neatly and doubled the involvement. So the notion that everything is free, which we do have to confound in terms of the internet, especially with the digitally native population who've grown up with everything being free, is going to be the big question of the 21st century. But let's ask another question first.
Could I say one thing I find fascinating is that it's free if it's on a laptop, and people are quite happy to pay if they look on a small phone, a small screen.
Yeah.
You go through an app, you pay.
Yeah.
You don't if you go through a laptop screen. It's just staggering, the difference in approach.
Yeah. And I think that's to do with who's using what technology, but I'm not here to talk about use of technology today, so I'm not going to stray into that territory, but that's one of my pet fields too. I wanted to pick up on Martin's point about new approaches and ideas around entrepreneurship, and I wanted to ask you both that question. What do you think is the new definition of entrepreneurship?
Well, there, of course, are more than one definition, but I think the definition that appeals most to me and which struck me actually when Robert Stigwood died, and I'll say a little bit more about why he was so important, is that an entrepreneur is somebody who breaks the mold, who sees things that other people don't see, and who changes the market, or at least part of the market. And Stigwood did all of that. I mean, there isn't anybody in this room who won't know about John Travolta, or the Bee Gees, or Eric Clapton, or Grease, or Saturday Night Fever, or Hair. And Stigwood was involved in all of them. Before Stigwood, in the 60s, 70s, and 80s, in the music business, you were either an agent, or a promoter, or a singer, or all of these categories were completely distinct. He completely trashed that model. And to come to the point, he grew the market. He built companies. But he wasn't a particularly nice man. He was a bruiser. And that's what I mean when I say that, you know, a lot of people come to me and say, I say, well, you know, what do you do? And they say, I'm an entrepreneur. I said, well, that's sort of interesting. What do you mean by that? And they say, well, you know, I'm trying to start a business. Of course, all of that is great. And very seriously, it's a wholly different world from the world that existed 20 years ago. It's great that people want to do their own thing, start their own businesses. But actually, if you're really going to succeed in building businesses, in generating growth, you've got to have some very tough sides. And you've got to have some very, very rigorous commercial disciplines. And above all, having good ideas doesn't crack it. Good ideas are 20 a penny. It's all in the execution. And I just thought about Stigwood. I mean, you know, 25 years, he changed the world in all sorts of ways.
So David, asking you a similar question, how does that definition of the entrepreneur fit into your territory of investment?
I agree absolutely with what Martin said, that entrepreneurialism is about rule breaking. I think the rest of it follows from that. Anyone who says that this is how it's done, well, you talk about Dyson, it's Hoover. Why would you start a vacuum cleaner company? So someone who just breaks the rule and says, no, this is wrong, I'm going to do something different. And what I always think about entrepreneurs is I'm humbled by them. And I love them. They are the people who create, who make something happen, who change the world, who take ideas, and whether it's music or whether it's vacuum cleaners, and just change our world. And we're only where we are because of people like that. what I find, and I had to find a form of words when I'm dealing with entrepreneurs, because 99% of them we turn down in your life as a venture capitalist, is I'm not right. I'm not saying I'm right. I'm not saying you're wrong, but I'm paid to make decisions by my investors as to where I put money, and I've decided not to go with you. But I'm not right, because the people who create from nothing and from ideas and from rule breaking are the ones who are right. They just can't have my money. But I think that's what it comes down to, is rule breaking.
So, Caroline, how many of these rule breakers, sorry, Caroline, I've just called you Caroline, Sarah. Freudian slip, got up too early, obviously. How many of these rule-breaking entrepreneurs come onto your patch?
Yeah, definitely. I think in terms of what makes an entrepreneur, I think you're right. The truly successful entrepreneurs are often they're visionaries. They are some kind of all-encompassing driving force. There's a passion behind it, and it probably isn't going to be everyone. And I think it's really useful to understand if that's not your thing, learning certain aspects of entrepreneurialism could be super useful. And I think that's some of the, I guess in a way, some of the approach that we try and impart on some of the creative businesses we work with, where they may not recognize in themselves that they are already a driving force because they have a passion for whatever their creative outlet or output is. And maybe they don't have to be the one person that's all-encompassing and does everything, because, as you mentioned earlier, sometimes you need headspace to not do anything and create the art. But learning certain skills and techniques and approaches where you can maybe partner up with someone else who might bring some of that to the party, or learn certain skills yourself which you can then use in your business. So whether or not you are the entrepreneur, and I mean in a kind of small sense, any artist or musician or is an entrepreneur because they are having the ideas, they want to create something new and put that out in the world, that's entrepreneurial. If they're wanting to make some kind of larger scale project or business or something that's going to enable them to keep doing that in a sustainable way, so therefore we can call it, having a business, there are certain aspects of the entrepreneurial approach that they could utilize, but maybe realize they don't have to do everything.
Can I say something on skills quickly? What you do needs to be replicated by about 50. That's probably one of the things I mean about problems of scale. But the other point I want to make about skills is that we talk quite a lot about investing in technical skills, the sort of work that creative skill set does, for example, front of camera, behind camera, all that kind of stuff. What we need to do is what you're doing to a degree, is to invest in business skills in this sector. And to come to your introduction, Susan, one of the things that we do, but which also needs to be replicated times 100, actually, is we pay for, entirely fund a course at the National Film and Television School. And this course is called Creative Business for Entrepreneurs and Executives. And it's a postgraduate course. And it's for people who wish, as we believe they need to do, to understand business models in film and television and games and music and digital, because all of these areas are coming together. The generations who build businesses in the future will need to understand business models in all of these sectors. And so we're contributing to that, but there are only 9 or 10 people on each of these courses. We need to do that times 100, actually, to build
I wanted
growth.
to just pick up on that. In the last session, 5 minutes, good. I'm working to that. This notion of what does this mean for the next generation? What does this mean for education? I was struck by the fact that somebody said to me once when my own daughter first started school that the trouble with the British education system is it says things like you're too clever by half, and sit down and only speak when you've put your hand up and I've called you to answer. And this rather reticent way of British education, followed by, you know, the more traditional sides of art and design training, for example, means that it's not just business skills, it's new communication skills, isn't it, that are needed. So one of the things I wanted to ask, just as a rounding up question, is what will our creative landscape then need to look like in 10 years' time? What are your predictions? And to throw in the big issue, what's the Europe question going to do to the creative industries? So very quickly, each of you. Shall I start with David?
What I'd like the sector to look like is that we take the undoubted energy and creative talent of the UK and take it overseas. We do anyway. We punch massively above our weight. I think 60% of all recorded music is recorded in English. So we've got a head start in content, publishing, technology. But I think it's about raising our game as businesses. We see entrepreneurs in the UK who want to get businesses to a certain scale and sell them and buy a yacht or a bigger house. In America, that's a stepping stone. They grow much quicker. Europe is not a homogeneous market. It doesn't benefit us in the same way as having a 400 million market in the US does, because it's homogeneous legal systems and language and etc. But the UK, probably more than anyone, is an internationalist country. We travel, we trade. Some of our businesses are selling all around the world, and they're tiny companies, and they'll go to the States and go to Asia. And we just need more and more of that to take the creative talent, the business talent that we need to bring in, hopefully the finance, and whether it's Europe or the rest of the world, I don't know. I think there are massive benefits to Europe, being contentious, but I think most of our businesses want to go to the States first, not Belgium, because of the size of the market, the opportunity, the language, whatever it might be.
Even though English is the international language?
Yes, I just think it's the addressable market.
Okay.
Get into LA or New York, you can grow from there, rather than each individual market around Europe or the world.
Sarah, so what are your predictions then for what it's going to be like in 10 years' time?
That's a doozy, isn't it? So yeah, racking my brains trying to think about this. I guess I'm going to approach this question just thinking about my own personal rants and maybe ways that different sectors could learn from each other, and trying to break down a kind of rarefied notion of what certain kind of arts and culture are, which I think builds these huge barriers to so many people who could possibly fall in love with them and therefore put their hands in their pocket and give people money for tickets, actually sell stuff. It's a crazy concept. But I think there's lots that can be done to really bang open the doors on that and really just let more people love all the great art and not make it something that's all rarefied. And I'm looking at things like, you know, certain ideas of concert halls and orchestras, and a lot is being done with lots of really cool organizations and people and individuals to do that. But I think that people are just missing a trick, and a whole swathe of the population could be getting involved in stuff. And some areas of sort of culture are miles behind others. My background is music, where the cultivation of a fan base is right at the heart of everything, making sure people who love music find the music to love and opening up ways for them to do that. And then they will go to your gigs and they will they might stream your music now, which is still a money earner. They'll buy your t-shirts. They'll support you for the life of the career of the artist, hopefully, is the idea. Anyway, so I just think there's stuff that can be learnt, and you know, when you've got a show or something going on, don't just rely on it being funded, sell bloody tickets for it, you know.
Okay, so finishing up with you, Martin, what's your sort of, $64 one thing that's got to change in 10 years' time?
Susan, that's such a difficult question. But I'll have a go at it, and I'll do it by reference to the discussion that took place in the last session. I think that in this country we are ridiculously hubristic about our own creativity and about how good we are at things. There are people in policy sectors who still talk about us as, the UK is the world's creative hub and all this sort of stuff. There are other countries around the world investing colossal amounts of money, which do have industrial strategies for their creative sectors. We don't. Sorry, Baz, we don't. And the question of where we are in 10 years' time is all going to be how do we respond to investment in Mumbai, investment in Shanghai, investment in all of these other places. And frankly, it could go any way. We could still be up there competing with the best, or we could find ourselves in the second division. I don't do predictions, but I'm sure that's the issue that we have to address as a society.
I'd like to thank the panelists. Interesting conversation, and no time for questions from the audience, I'm afraid. Hold on to them. I'm sure you'll be able to pip them into the next session. Thank you.